le interviste di UniToNews.
Professor John Goddard, good morning. You're here, Professor Goddard is here for the inauguration of our academic year, and the topic of his lecture will be Civic University. We have now a short chat about this very important topic. The first question I would like to pose you is this. Universities are called, even pushed today, to develop as a triple helix. But your proposal is different. Is a fourth dimension, local community, civic society, cities that to introduce. So why civic university might be better than a triple helix?
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very honoured to be here for this event. Well, just to say that the triple helix concept derived from the notion of the university working with business, government, and in a triple helix, three universities, government, and business, with a strong focus on the production of innovations for business. But I think what is happening increasingly, even in the business world, is the recognition that if new products and new services are going to be accepted and diffused into society, you need the citizens involved as users to help shape the products and the services, collaborating with that. But also recognition that citizens actually have ideas and sources of knowledge themselves, that we're in a situation now where with digital technologies citizens can actually generate new ideas and work with the academy and with business in what's called the co-production model. And so that and most citizens, most people live their lives out within small geographical areas, particularly the city. So the word citizen and city go together clearly. So the notion of the quadruple helix is universities, business are still important, it's not replacing the business community, government, both local government as well as national government, and universities and citizens working together in the whole process of co-production of knowledge that addresses big societal challenges like sustainable development, the problems of an aging population, and both of those big societal challenges have a manifestation in the city.
But university can offer to cities only just services, let's say medicine, healthcare services, let's say culture, or can offer to cities something more, stimulate some kind of innovation? What kind? Have you some examples from your studies and researches?
Well, just take healthcare, for example. One of the biggest challenges in cities is not only sort of the medical treatment of people as they get older, but how you create conditions for better living in cities for older people. And so we're working with in my university with citizens about how to make an age-friendly city. So how people can have healthy and active aging, and that involves not only the medical profession, dealing with the normal aspects of the health of aging, but also healthy living. How do you get around the city? Issues of transport. How do you manage people staying in their own homes through assistive technologies? So the whole issue of an aging population is not just a clinical medicine question, it's the sort of innovations that are needed in the way in which service is delivered, how the city functions. So I think the age-friendly city is a good example of bringing all of those partners together in a quadruple helix.
Okay. Have you examples about culture?
Well, I think the other thing that's interesting about culture is again, because of the rapid spread of digital technologies, there are all sorts of possibilities for citizens to work with the university in what we call now digital civics. How the citizens engage with the university academy in understanding culture, getting children involved in culture. So the whole notion that it's not just the university as a big pyramid of high culture, but how do you engage the citizens in the cultural heritage that the university has? So in your exhibition out there, is a tremendous possibility.
Okay. University research, now a critical point. University research is for many scholars, and for many scholars should also be global and far future oriented. Can this be contradictory with your perspective of a civic university that pay attention to local territories and that might be a little bit short-sighted or obliged to have immediate aims and objectives?
I understand that. I think it's quite interesting that these big societal challenges that the Academy is being asked to address, for example, sustainable development, needs also the academic to see the outside world as a potential living laboratory for testing ideas, for experimentation, and the notion of the city being a living laboratory for senior scientists tackling big scientific questions, but actually working with the city and the community in the co-production of knowledge. And so what we try and do in my university is say, well, we rate our academics not only in terms of what they are good at, that's the classic academic question about articles in peer-reviewed journals and so on, but we also ask the question, what are you good for? And that is often very apparent when you ask them, well, what are you doing for the city? So there's almost an ethical question. You are a citizen of Turin or Newcastle, and what are you doing for the city as well? And where we've brought this together in my city, we've mobilised leading academics to work on the future of the city. How is their scientific knowledge, which they're developing for the future, more generically, what does it mean for the city in which they're working? And so we now are working on the future to 2065, a long time ahead. But it's a very fascinating process. We're working with the community and with the academics.
This way you work with future, and you can be also local and not only local.
Yes.
Civic University is local.
Exactly. There's a big program I'm working on now under UNESCO called the Global Universities Network for Innovation, and it is tackling just those questions, how academics can tackle global questions and also work locally.
Okay. Why cities are so important rather than national governments?
Well, I think what we're seeing across the European Union is a greater big centralised states that are increasingly talking about the local. This whole idea of engaging the citizens. The nation state is under a lot of pressure. Some of the most dynamic changes have to be that Europe is facing. For example, issues of migration, absorbing people from different parts of the world. That really works itself out in particular places. How do communities function? And so the notion that civil society is very much a place-based concept as well as a national. There are distinctive national cultures, but the notion of civil society is essentially also a place-based culture. So I think national governments are struggling to manage these issues, and so they have to have partnerships with local communities in tackling the big European challenges.
Nowadays, this is my last question, the integration of the European Union is one of our biggest challenges and is challenged by the present war situation and by many others and the present results of many elections in various countries. Do you think that university can help some way a process of social integration of Europe? What kind of integration of Europe we need, if we need, from our point of view, from the point of view of all this process of innovation and civic responsibility you mentioned in this interview?
Okay, very big question. as you're probably aware, the European Union has no official competence in higher education. It has competence in research, it has competence in regional policy and competition policy, but it doesn't have a competence specifically in higher education. But I've been working with a body called the European Economic and Social Committee, which is a sort of civil society structure. It's only advisory, and they're working on this whole concept of universities for Europe. How do we bring the universities, who are key actors in all of these big debates, who deal with issues of health, environmental sustainability, social inclusion? So how can we develop a network of universities plugging into the moment? What is happening in European Commission is that the Commission is slicing the university. It's taking the research bit, the teaching bit, the engagement bit, and in essence what we want to get a more holistic view of the university as a key European institution, working both through its teaching and its research and its engagement to help realise the European project of a much more cohesive and integrative and innovative Europe. And so I think the way in which we can use the networks, particularly of universities and cities, to help on the European project is something I'm spending a lot of time on behind the scenes in Brussels right now.
My very last question: you have been a university professor for a lot of time, and you have had a lot of young students under your exam. What suggestion would you give to a young student that is now attending university, in order to give him the opportunity to be a protagonist in this process of innovation we mentioned during this interview?
Well, I think the critical thing for students, and I think it's more for their teachers as well,
also for young researchers
and the young researchers, I think the important point is to try and not only have your disciplinary perspective, your subject area, but to be aware of the interconnections between your subject area and lots of other subject areas. We must, we want a new cadre of students who, when they graduate, have skills to work across knowledge boundaries, to work outside the academy, not just within the academy. So I would encourage students now, as undergraduates, to get some practice in working in the community, to working with business, to get some experience beyond the academy, practical experience, to develop their skills to go, as I think personally I have done, continually backwards and forwards between the world of thought and practice. You need to develop your skills to be both thoughtful and practical, and also to make collaborations with other people, to develop the skills for collaborative working with other people. And I think working in the community, which is very strong in Latin America, you cannot graduate from a Mexican university without 400 hours of community service. So the notion somehow that you do a lot of things outside the academy and bring it back to your academic work, I would encourage students to do that, and I would encourage their teachers to make that possible in terms of their degree programs.
Okay. Thank you so much for all this very interesting perspective, and I hope also the University of Torino will practice early most of these perspective and strategies. Okay. Thank you so much, Professor John Goddard.
Thank you.
Le interviste di UniToNews.